The information in this video comes from thorough research. Please share your thoughts on the video. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who helped create the atomic age, in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. The physicists have known sin, and this is a knowledge which they cannot lose. J. Robert Oppenheimer. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who helped create the atomic age. Few scientists in history have become symbols of an entire era. J. Robert Oppenheimer was one of them. He was a brilliant theoretical physicist, a gifted intellectual, a complicated political figure, and a scientific leader of the Manhattan Project, the secret wartime effort that produced the world's first atomic bombs. His story is not simply the story of scientists who helped build a weapon. It is a story about ambition, fear, responsibility, politics, science, and the consequences of discovering knowledge that can change the world forever. Oppenheimer was born Julius Robert Oppenheimer on April 22, 1904, in New York City. His father, Julius, was a successful textile importer, while his mother, Ella, was a painter. Oppenheimer grew up surrounded by books, art, languages, and intellectual discussion. From an early age, he demonstrated an extraordinary ability to learn. He developed interests not only in science, but also in literature, philosophy, languages, and ancient cultures. He graduated from the Ethical Culture School in New York in 1921. The following year, he entered Harvard University. Although he initially studied chemistry, his attention increasingly turned toward physics, particularly the rapidly developing field of modern theoretical physics. Oppenheimer was extraordinarily ambitious as a student. He completed his Harvard degree in only 3 years, graduating in 1925. After Harvard, he traveled to Europe to continue his education in physics. He initially studied at Cambridge, but experimental laboratory work did not suit him particularly well. His real talent was theoretical physics. In 1926, he moved to the University of Göttingen in Germany, one of the world's great centers of theoretical physics. There he studied under physicist Max Born and became part of a remarkable generation of scientists who were transforming our understanding of nature. Among the physicists around him were figures such as Werner Heisenberg, Wolfgang Pauli, Paul Dirac, Enrico Fermi, and Edward Teller. Oppenheimer earned his PhD from Göttingen in 1927. His early scientific work contributed to the development of quantum mechanics and the understanding of molecules. His collaboration with Max Born produced what became known as the Born-Oppenheimer approximation, an important concept in quantum chemistry and molecular physics. After returning to the United States, Oppenheimer established himself as one of America's leading theoretical physicists. He taught at the University of California, Berkeley, and the California Institute of Technology. He worked on quantum mechanics, nuclear physics, astrophysics, and other areas of theoretical physics. But history was about to place him in a completely different role: the threat of nuclear weapons. During the 1930s, scientists discovered something extraordinary about the atomic nucleus. Certain heavy elements could undergo nuclear fission, splitting into smaller nuclei and releasing enormous amounts of energy. Under the right conditions, the process could create a chain reaction. The possibility was both scientifically fascinating and terrifying. As Adolf Hitler's Germany expanded across Europe, scientists became increasingly concerned that Nazi Germany might develop an atomic weapon. In 1939, Albert Einstein and physicist Leo Szilard helped bring the potential danger of nuclear weapons to the attention of U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The United States eventually began organizing a massive effort to investigate and develop nuclear weapons. This effort became the Manhattan Project. It was one of the largest scientific and industrial undertakings in history. The project required physicists, chemists, engineers, mathematicians, military personnel, construction workers, and thousands of other people. In 1942, General Leslie Groves was placed in charge of the military side of the project. Groves needed a scientist capable of bringing together some of the greatest physicists in the world. He selected Oppenheimer. It was an extraordinary decision. Oppenheimer was only 38 years old. Yet he was chosen to lead the scientific work that would attempt to create the first atomic bomb. Los Alamos. A secret laboratory was established in the remote mountains of New Mexico. It became known as Los Alamos. Oppenheimer became its scientific director. The challenge was enormous. Scientists needed to understand how to create a nuclear chain reaction that could release energy rapidly enough to produce an explosive device. They had to solve theoretical problems while engineers and technicians worked on practical ones. The project brought together some of the greatest scientific minds of the era. Oppenheimer's greatest contribution was not necessarily a single equation or invention. It was his ability to organize people. He brought different scientific groups together and encouraged communication between them. He understood enough of many areas of physics to follow the problems being investigated across the laboratory. Los Alamos became a remarkable concentration of scientific talent. Within an extraordinarily short period of time, the team moved from theoretical concepts toward a working weapon. The Los Alamos Laboratory was established in 1943, and the first atomic bomb was tested only about 20 months later. Trinity. Then came July 16, 1945. In the early morning darkness of the New Mexico desert, scientists and military personnel prepared for the first nuclear weapons test. The test was called Trinity. At approximately 5:29 a.m., the device exploded. For the first time in human history, a nuclear weapon had been detonated. The explosion created an enormous flash of light and a massive fireball. The scientific achievement was extraordinary, but it also represented something much darker. Humanity had entered the nuclear age. Oppenheimer later recalled thinking of a passage from the Bhagavad Gita when reflecting on the event, famously associating the moment with the words, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The quotation became permanently associated with Oppenheimer. But the Trinity test was only the beginning. In August 1945, atomic bombs were used against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The attacks killed enormous numbers of people and contributed to Japan's surrender, bringing World War II to an end. The world had entered a new era. Oppenheimer's crisis of conscience. The success of the Manhattan Project changed Oppenheimer. Before the war, he had been primarily a scientist searching for knowledge. Now his work had helped produce a weapon capable of destroying an entire city. The scientist who had helped unlock nuclear energy increasingly became concerned about what humanity would do with that power. After the war, Oppenheimer became an important advisor on nuclear policy. In 1947, he became chairman of the General Advisory Committee of the Atomic Energy Commission, where he participated in discussions about nuclear weapons and atomic energy. He also became director of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, a position he held from 1947 until 1966. There, he returned to something closer to the intellectual world he had known before the war. He helped build the Institute into an important center for theoretical physics and encouraged scientists from different disciplines to interact. The hydrogen bomb debate. But the nuclear arms race was accelerating. The United States began considering the development of a far more powerful weapon, the hydrogen bomb. Unlike the atomic bombs used in World War II, thermonuclear weapons could potentially produce vastly greater explosive yields. Oppenheimer was skeptical about the push toward the hydrogen bomb and became associated with opposition to its rapid development. Others, including physicist Edward Teller, strongly supported the project. The disagreement became part of a much larger political struggle over America's nuclear strategy during the early Cold War. And Oppenheimer's political past became increasingly important. During the 1930s, he had associated with people connected to left-wing and communist organizations. He himself had never been a member of the Communist Party, but his associations attracted government attention. During the early 1950s, suspicion surrounding Oppenheimer intensified. Then came the event that would dramatically change the final chapter of his public career, the 1954 security hearing. In 1954, Oppenheimer's security clearance was challenged. He was subjected to a lengthy security hearing concerning his past associations, political views, and questions about his judgment and reliability. The hearing became one of the most famous controversies in the history of American science. The Atomic Energy Commission ultimately revoked his security clearance. The decision effectively removed Oppenheimer from direct influence over U.S. nuclear policy. Importantly, the later historical record has questioned the fairness of the process. In 2022, the U.S. Department of Energy formally vacated the 1954 decision, stating that the process had violated the Commission's own regulations and that the evidence of Oppenheimer's loyalty had been further affirmed over time. The reversal did not erase the controversy. Instead, it became another chapter in the complicated story of scientists caught between scientific freedom, national security, politics, and personal responsibility. His final years. Despite losing his security clearance, Oppenheimer continued working as a scientist and intellectual. At the Institute for Advanced Study, he remained influential in physics and in discussions about science and society. He became a symbol of the moral dilemma faced by scientists whose discoveries can be used for both peaceful and destructive purposes. In 1963, Oppenheimer received the Enrico Fermi Award, one of the highest honors given by the U.S. government for achievements in nuclear science. By then, his reputation had begun to recover, but his health was deteriorating. Oppenheimer was diagnosed with throat cancer and died on February 18, 1967, at the age of 62. The legacy of Oppenheimer. So how should we remember J. Robert Oppenheimer? Was he the father of the atomic bomb? A brilliant physicist? A tragic figure? A government advisor? A victim of political persecution? Perhaps he was all of these things. Oppenheimer did not create the atomic bomb alone. The Manhattan Project was an enormous collective effort involving thousands of scientists, engineers, technicians, military personnel, and workers. But Oppenheimer played a unique role. He brought together some of the greatest scientific minds of the 20th century and led the laboratory responsible for turning theoretical nuclear physics into a functioning weapon. His story also raises a much larger question. What happens when scientific knowledge becomes powerful enough to change civilization? Science can reveal how nature works, but science itself does not decide how that knowledge should be used. That responsibility belongs to people, governments, institutions, and societies. Oppenheimer's life illustrates this conflict more dramatically than almost any other scientist in history. He helped create a weapon that transformed warfare forever. Then he spent much of the rest of his life thinking about what that transformation meant. His story is therefore not simply about the atomic bomb. It is about the relationship between knowledge and power. It is about ambition and responsibility. It is about the moment when humanity discovered that it could unlock energy hidden inside the atom, and then had to confront the consequences. Today, more than half a century after his death, Oppenheimer remains one of the most recognizable scientists of the 20th century. His name is inseparable from the birth of the nuclear age. And perhaps the most enduring lesson of his life is this: the greatest discoveries in science do not automatically make humanity wiser. Knowledge gives us power. What we choose to do with that power determines what kind of future we create. If you have any experiences related to this topic, be sure to share them with us. Until the next episode, be mindful of the energies around you.